Welcome everyone to the Coin Gamma Show. We're happy to have an illustrious guest with us today. Even more important because it's actually my first fellow CUNY alum that I've had on the podcast. So I'm pretty excited about that. I have Gregory Rocco. Likes to go by Rocco. Rocco leads strategy at Alpine, a Consensys formation. Previously, he was on the Token Foundry team. He worked on and written about many token governance models for multiple clients. Rocco has experience in advising on both communications and technical strategy, and also worked at startups like at Loomia and Augmate. He's previously written for many publications such as CCN, Bitcoinist, Token Daily, Token Economy, and was an editor-in-chief for investFeed. Welcome to the podcast and show. We were used to be audio only. Now we're also on YouTube, so I'm getting used to using new terminology. But thanks for spending some time with us this morning and sharing some of your background. Can you fill in on anything I might have missed?
No, I think one of the big points is definitely that CUNY representation.
That's
happy to be a CUNY alum here in New York.
That's right. What CUNY did you go to for everybody that's listening?
I went to Hunter College, and I actually just finished up at the grad center, but keeping it local. So it's been pretty good.
I love it. I love it. For my listeners, I went to Brew College as a reminder. My parents met at Hunter, so when I met Greg, I told him about that. Rocco, I met him. I told him about that, and it's awesome. It's awesome. We got it. New York City is a hotbed for crypto and blockchain, but the CUNY representation is not as strong as it should be, right? So we gotta pump that out. So I'm happy to connect with you. My alma mater, Brew College, has been doing a lot of stuff around blockchain. And I'm sure Hunter College is also doing it as well as the grad center. So we just gotta keep the movement going.
Yeah, I actually recently gave a workshop at the grad center, so hopefully spreading the message to CUNY a bit further. I know Baruch is pretty involved with blockchain, but some of the CUNYs definitely need to step their game up, and maybe I'll reach out, see what I can do there.
No, I love it. I love it. Hey, it's all one family. So Hunter alums are welcome at Baruch to kind of participate. Hunter students are welcome at Baruch. So it's all one family. Awesome. Well, you have a pretty cool background. Worked at Consensys. You were a writer. How did you discover crypto? Like, what was your path to get into this space?
So for me, I have a background, weirdly enough, in modernist literature and media.
Okay.
So communications is always a big thing. Taking stuff and communicating at a high level.
100%.
And originally, I kind of read up on things back in 2013, but didn't really kind of jump into the pool until maybe 2016, 2017. Sure. Before that, I was actually working in media, but it was through actually a Craigslist ad. I was curious. I started reading more 2016, 2017, started diving even deeper. And that's when I first started working with investFeed at the time. And that's where it all kind of started from. So it was kind of gradual, and then jumped in the pool and kind of been in ever since. So it's been a fun ride.
But investFeed obviously is around investing, but it's not focused on crypto. It's focused on the more traditional asset classes.
Oh, they were originally traditional, and then they moved over to crypto.
Okay.
I joined them during their transition.
Oh, excellent. So you have a strong writing background, and given that this is a very communications focused industry, white papers kind of are what set the tone for projects. Even though it's arguable that not too many investors have read white papers, but it's awesome that you have that skill set to kind of help people articulate their visions.
Yeah, man, and especially with white papers, it's a very tricky topic because white papers should be very succinct, like only a couple pages, getting to the point, technical enough to really express the point, but not overtly technical, not overtly long, because then it becomes ridiculous. And in 2017, 2018, you saw white papers hitting 60 to 70 pages, where they kind of became small books.
Right.
People didn't even want to read them anymore. Like you're saying, it became ridiculous at a certain point.
Yeah, I'm sure you had that. I'm sure during that time you probably got a lot of offers to write white papers for people.
Yeah, at the time I did receive many offers just because people always needed white paper writers, and seeing those actual jobs float around, it became seeing it was how ridiculous it was firsthand. Those 60, 70 pages, we need to hit this target, even though it really should have been about actually explaining your product or project well.
100%. Now, how did you kind of move over from investFeed into Consensys? I know you had some stops between that.
Yeah, so between that, I started expanding the amount of publications I wrote for. So it was Bitcoinist, CCN. I started writing on my Medium blog, started kind of getting my thoughts down on paper, which is pretty good. Built up a bit of a social presence. Then I started working with companies, like contracting on the communication side, and on the I started doing a lot more research into incentive design, and eventually started going down that path.
Sure.
And I left investFeed January 2018. Then I started working with a company called Augmate, who is actually I'm still actually working with them to a degree. They did a security through Securitize.
Sure.
And so seeing that entire process and getting an opening to that entire world was really fascinating.
Right.
And then I had a friend over at Token Foundry who was on the incentive design team who kind of brought me in.
Awesome.
From there, that's kind of where the work at Consensys started. So it's been really good.
Awesome. I mean, obviously you joined Consensys during a time where, during your time there has been kind of a transition, kind of a bit of a contraction and things of that sort. Not to get any too much in detail, but how was that? How was kind of like the transition there?
No, it's all looking very good. I think the Consensys 2.0 vision is out. There were a lot of news stories on it, so it's all very positive. It's all kind of good changes that are going on that end.
Right. It brings a lot of focus.
Yeah.
100%. Awesome. So so you were attacking Token Foundry, and now you're with Alpine. And so tell us about Alpine. What does it do? What's its focus?
So Alpine is mostly focused on enterprise consulting, so kind of product market fit, multi-sided marketplaces, tokenization, and also whether or not blockchain is the right idea for these enterprises, whether or not it could increase efficiencies in some of their workflows,
sure,
whether it can be applied to certain things, or whether it even can. They're even thinking about it in a bad context, and we're the ones to say not to do it because it won't be efficient for them. Then it's a success on our end.
Sure.
Those are the kind of things we work around, that and productization. So if you need some kind of modularized solution in your business that needs to be built, part of what we do is working on that, and also kind of some experiments on the side as well.
Sure.
So on Twitter, we had this TCR Party thing, which has been
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of been all the wave as of this past couple of weeks. There's even an article on it on GrainDesk. Like, so what's TCR Party? How does that work? That's kind of like that's something that's proprietary to your team that you created, not for clients, just for yourself.
Yeah,
just to go out and have fun.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So it started as a bit of a shower thought. Token curated registries, so TCRs are like, imagine if you had instead of Princeton Review curating the top list of 100 colleges, you had like a bunch of trolls and token holders do it.
Okay.
There are a lot of economic assumptions. There are a lot of assumptions about how the list will be curated, whether you could actually curate an objective list with value.
Sure.
But the two things we wanted to test with TCR Party, we wanted a kind of adversarial environment like Twitter or Bitcoiners, Ethereum heads, all kind of get angry at each other and have this kind of rude discourse, and it's great because they're incentivized to who's the best. You'll get a different answer every time.
Sure.
And what TCR Party does, it's curating a list of 100 counts. So everyone's going to have a different opinion on who's like the best account to put on that list.
Okay.
One bot.
What is like the top 100 counts in the crypto?
In like crypto Twitter. That's kind of the idea. And one bot retweets all the accounts that are on the list that have been added to the registry. And the other bot actually abstracts everything blockchain related. So instead of you getting Ether, getting these tokens, using MetaMask, signing on transactions, going to this random website, you're actually interfacing it through Twitter the entire time. You're not going anywhere for it. You're interacting with the bot. The bot's handling nominations, challenges, voting, giving you tokens, whatever it is. It's handling all your balances.
And what is the token? Did you create your own token for this purpose?
Yeah. So the token's actually on RankB right now, one of the Ethereum testnets. And when you sign up for it, the bot sets up a multi-signature wallet with you, so it can manage transactions on your behalf, and new users are just granted tokens. It's purely inflationary, but it's just for the experiment in general.
Well, if it works out and you move it to mainnet, what happens to the people that got it on testnet? Does it get convert, or they have to start over because they had fake? Like the fake crypto.
Yeah, so we're thinking about that now and how we'd actually do a transition. Maybe it'll be like a seasonal thing. Like season 1 was this kind of testnet phase. Maybe there'll be rewards associated with being on the list during season 1. Kind of like competitive games where you kind of have those insignias for what season you played competitively.
Sure.
A mainnet launch we're actually architecting and thinking about it now. Maybe a sidechain implementation, because obviously the one thing we want to make sure we do is not bring it too far, off the reservation, where we want users to still just be on Twitter and interact with it on Twitter, not worry about Ether, not worry about wallets. So we're kind of working through all the kinks now on that, potentially to keep it scalable and also keep it extremely cost effective if it is on mainnet, but also give the users the ability to actually transfer the tokens out. So we could not only test kind of these subjective TCRs and using Twitter as a UX, but we could also test now economic assumptions. Because right now the tokens are untradeable, but when they are in a tradable environment, what happens now to the list? Is there an incentive to now, trade tokens, and it will plutocracies form, whatever it is? To be able to test those assumptions. But for now, it's just kind of a fun game on testnet to test Twitter as a front end for everything, and testing, attention economy things like, are people going to get bored of this, and what features can we add to actually keep it interesting?
Sure. Now, one of the things, obviously you're using the Twitter API to build this, and Twitter API has an interesting background as far as like some people have built it in the past and they've been shut off, and there's been scaling issues and stuff like that. So far, has it been all good, or have you run into issues?
We ran into some great issues when we first launched this thing, and it's all good. It's all good for us because it's all kind of a learning experience. There wasn't much at stake other than parts of the experiment. When we started, there were two things. The first thing, actually, we launched on Ropsten, which was the Ethereum proof of work testnet. And 3 hours into launch, one of the largest miners on Ropsten just decided that they were done mining on Ropsten. So it went from coming every 30 seconds to every 30 minutes. So we couldn't get any transactions.
Oh, wow.
So we're like, okay, we got to reset the entire.
And that's tough because like Twitter's so instant, right?
Yeah. It's like everything's happening now. People started getting into it. It's like, okay, we got to reset the entire list now because we got to migrate the smart contracts. We were able to migrate the wallets because we just set up new wallets with whoever was in that database. But we had to redeploy, which erased the entire TCR. And then, like you're saying with Twitter, an hour after we redeployed on Rinkeby, we're like, all right, great, we're up and running. Twitter took away our write access.
Oh my goodness!
So we couldn't even get the bot to tweet anything out or message anyone.
Right.
And it was because when people were being nominated or challenged, the bot was tagging them. So Twitter was like, saw it as spam, and they're like, don't do that. So 2 days later, we got our API write access, and now things have kind of been running smoothly.
Did you have to speak to somebody at Twitter about that, or just kind of?
We had to file the whole process and be like the appeal and everything.
Right. Well, it was a learning experience, and
completely.
And now that Jack is out here participating in similar things, I'm sure that he anything that comes up like that will go straight to the top. What do you think about him? What do you think about some of the stuff he's been involved in? It seems like he's been really publicizing himself as a crypto proponent, a Bitcoin proponent, Lightning Network proponent. It seemed like it overlapped a little bit with your project. What did it steal some of your thunder, or was it a good thing?
Yeah, it was a good thing. I mean, I love seeing Jack kind of being on the Bitcoin train. I know he's been a Bitcoiner for a while. I know he's invested in Lightning Labs. He keynoted Consensys, so he's been kind of on the ground. He's been following people in the space, following publications, keeping up to date. Someone was joking, like, they changed the character limit to 280 so they could put Lightning invoices in Twitter.
That's funny.
And he responded. He's been really fun about it. Normally you see like tech CEOs that build successful products as these kind of like demigods, but Jack's here on the ground. Like, he's talking to people, he's interacting. People. He was joking around. When someone like asked him even about Tron, and he's like, I love that movie. I thought that was great.
I did see that. And obviously, he has two roles, him being CEO of Square. Probably, that's probably, I think it's number 2 in the App Store right now. So like, he could really put crypto in a lot of people's hands. So
exactly.
Pretty awesome.
That's a very powerful thing when you got that much, power behind you as a payment processor. And it's like, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when, talking about Lightning integrations. And he's also got Cash App. So he's been definitely working on it.
Exactly. Have people gotten confused between your project and that as of yet, or no?
Oh, no. The Lightning torch has been kind of just going on in the background with Bitcoiners. Our thing more appeals to the Ethereum community because it's kind of built on Ethereum, using Rinkeby as the back end. My team obviously has been thinking around Lightning experiments too. We're definitely chain agnostic.
Right.
But
well, given back to your time in Alpine and what you're working on now, and obviously Consensys being led by Joe Lubin, and it's all around Ethereum. When you consult your clients, is it still kind of, at least what I assume from the outside is that you have to you only advise clients to use Ethereum-based solutions. Is that still the case?
If it's the best solution to use.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Now, what about you personally? Obviously you have some interest in Lightning. You've worked with Securitize as well in the past. So security tokens and things of that sort. Do you believe in have you kind of worked with any of the other alternatives? Do you believe in any of them, or are you Ethereum maximalist?
Oh no, I definitely I feel like a Bitcoiner at heart.
Okay.
But I like treating everything else as a fun. I call them like petri dishes. So if you could test assumptions about whether it's fungibility, whether it's governance, whatever it is, in these small contained environments, and if they work in these small contained environments, you could potentially deploy them on larger chains. Which is why I won't discount any coin for what it's doing, because if you're not listening, you're not learning.
Of
if you find something that doesn't work with one chain, why try it again when you could, not and not screw the same thing up and not have, not repeat history.
Yeah, you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned fungibility. I think I read that you are a fungibility maximalist.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Well, give us a short description of what fungibility is, and then explain why you're a maximalist in that domain.
Fungibility deals with the interchangeability of goods. So, good example, cash is fungible. I'll give you a $20 bill. You'll give me a 10, a 5, and 5 singles. We both agree that it's the same exact value.
Of course.
There's no difference in value whatsoever. That is pristine. Both are accepted. Totally interchangeable.
Sure.
You lend me your Tesla Model S, and I destroy the thing. I crash it. I screw the car up, and I bring you a absolutely brand new Model S.
Okay.
So two totally different things. Your Model S and that new Model S.
Right.
Even though they're the same car, they're not fungible.
Sure.
And this topic comes up very often with cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin we thought was, anonymous in the beginning. There was no address reuse, whatever it is. But, you have companies like Chainalysis that are able to track the UTXOs, see where coins came from.
Right.
And let's say you had coins that pass through, Silk Road. Those could be, blacklisted.
Right.
And, businesses in the future might see that and might not want to, you might be complicit for something you didn't do.
Right.
Even though you might have been passed at some point in time coins that passed through the Silk Road and you weren't involved with Silk Road at all.
Sure.
You might not be able to transact with those coins because they passed through the Silk Road.
Yeah.
It's a very important thing with privacy to, have that fungibility with cryptocurrency. I'm a big proponent of Manero simply because of fungibility. It's privacy is a very important component. It's a very difficult thing to implement. There's no perfect privacy. There's no absolute privacy.
Sure.
But the closer we get to.
Why Manero over Zcash or anything else?
So there's a couple things. I will, obviously Zcash and zk snarks, it's superior technology, but there are a couple of factors that, and don't get me wrong, I like Zcash. Sure. But the problems I have with it are more, ideology driven. So the way there's a foundation, there was a trusted setup. So when Zcash, sets up ZK, the zero knowledge proofs, there's a multi-party setup where a couple of trusted actors have to set the entire thing up, and there's computational waste that they have to destroy, and you have to trust that they've destroyed it efficiently. Right. And once it's all set up, then it's up and running. Whereas something like Manero, there was no trusted setup. The way, ring confidential transactions, ring signatures, and all the stuff they use for privacy works is there was never like a multi-party setup. There was never like that kind of thing. Sure. And the other side of it is also privacy by default. So as of September, I'm not sure if I think it was 2017 or 2018. Manero turned on privacy as a default. Yeah. Sure. Whereas, Zcash still has shielded and transparent transactions. So it's kind of like an ideology thing. Listen, I like the vision for both. Obviously, to have a private cryptocurrency. I don't think sound money can be sound unless it's fungible. Sure. It's tough with Bitcoin too, because Bitcoin's very conservative, obviously. And also if you introduce privacy to Bitcoin as a total, engulfing thing, it becomes very difficult to audit supplies. Okay. So to audit that 21 million becomes even more difficult. But obviously they're working on different.
Tether. Yeah.
Tether is a whole. Different,
as far as auditing.
That's
an example that people think about, but that makes sense.
Yeah, so privacy, that's why fungibility for me is a big thing, because I don't think you could have sound money unless it's fungible. Because if it's trackable, then it can be tracked back to you, even though you've had, you're not complicit in where it's been. Can can a store owner stop you if your cash has at one point passed through a money laundering operation or terrorist financing? No, because it's fungible.
Right.
You weren't involved in that whatsoever. The cash might have hit 20 hands before it hit yours,
Right.
you know, so many degrees of separation. But in blockchain world where everything is traceable, it becomes a whole different story.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I read somewhere that, every dollar has has a certain trace of cocaine on it,
Yeah.
right? And now that things are becoming digital, you actually putting bring a big point. People can actually just look into the blockchain and see when it did touch or when it was used to purchase cocaine or something like that. And somebody that's looking to just buy a coffee has nothing to do with that, right? So. No, that's super interesting. And yeah, I obviously understood some of the use cases for privacy, but you articulated it and brought up some examples that are even more real. So
Yeah.
no, all right, cool. We're definitely gonna check out Monero.
And there's definitely a couple other things listen, that's the one thing I want to advocate for is kind of privacy for the right reasons.
Sure.
It's been a big thing because people think why do you want a private cryptocurrency? Well, you want to do illegal stuff, and that's really not the case at all. It's first, you don't want to be complicit when the money has touched something that you had absolutely nothing to do with. The other thing is you want to protect yourself. You don't want people knowing your net worth. You don't want to have to be fearful if you send someone a transaction and they're able to trace it back to your wallet.
Right.
Because obviously these ledgers are transparent. They'll know exactly how much you have.
Sure.
If you accidentally send Bitcoin from your main wallet and someone sees that and someone sees, hey, he's got this much, and even purchase retracking. So businesses that want to track you based on your purchasing habits, if something is truly private and fungible, they can't do that.
Right.
You can't be retargeted if you buy something with cash.
Yeah, there's so many levels. I mean, obviously we're seeing what's going on with Venezuela right now, with that capital controls. You can have something where people are, even now, sometimes in the U.S., people could audit who donated to certain politicians, right? And you may want that to be private, right?
Exactly.
Maybe you change your political views, right? But people could always put it on you that you donated to XYZ candidate. And that's awesome. You're also a governance expert, right? So is fungibility something that when you advise people on how they should govern their project, is that something that you make sure they put in, or is governance focused on something completely different?
I gotta say, fungibility obviously becomes an element of kind of base chains, but in terms of smaller projects, not something I necessarily advise on. And the one thing I'll say is that if anyone ever tells you that they have governance solved,
right,
then they are definitely full of it.
Sure.
No one ever has governance solved. There are creative ways that you can, think about governance, and governance is a very important thing and should be thought about as a means to upgrade protocols.
Right.
But it's also extremely difficult.
Right. When I hear governance, I just think centralization automatically, right? Because obviously governance means there's a team of people that are always there that are, like the central bank that are, trying to add liquidity, remove liquidity, incentivize, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that not the right way to look at it, or?
Yeah, I definitely, I don't think it is the right way to look at it. And the reason being is you could have governance be something, ungovernance is a form of governance, is what I say.
Sure.
And it's been said even before, I've followed that ideology for a little while, where you take something like Bitcoin, right? The way Bitcoin's upgraded is, or the way changes are made in Bitcoin is, something is developed, tested, implemented into clients, and then full nodes choose whether or not they will actually want to upgrade those clients.
Right.
There's no formal structure. It's as a full node and someone validating transactions, and as a miner and someone mining chains, do you want to go through with this upgrade? Totally up to you. There's no forced upgrade. There's no automatic upgrade. You choose which flavor of the client you want to run as a full node, and you choose which chain you want to mine as a miner.
Sure.
So kind of this, it becomes a lot harder to reach social consensus.
Okay.
Because you got to get everyone who's running these full nodes and everyone who's mining to agree that this change is the best direction for this.
Of course.
There are also issues of ideology about the chain. Do you not want to compromise on trustlessness? Do you want bigger blocks? So, the one thing I like about ungovernance is if you don't like something, fork off.
That's it.
So and that's what Bitcoin Cash did, is they don't like the block size, great, fork off, and see if you can gather enough social consensus, full nodes and miners to actually support your thesis. And this kind of, it's cacophonous. It's a bit of a mess. But at the same time, it's what keeps something like Bitcoin very resilient, very conservative, might not upgrade as often, but it's what keeps it decentralized.
Of course.
That anyone who could run a full node is a participant in governance.
Of course.
There are other systems that obviously have created like kind of, direct, there are direct democracy systems with token voting, for example. There's like liquid democracy where you're delegating. And then these are the centralization trade-offs for efficiency, so to speak.
Sure.
So if there's a certain direction a project knows where it wants to go, it might be easier to have delegation schemes. You also have issues with like voter turnout, people who really don't want to participate. They just kind of want to speculate, whatever it is.
Right.
Might not want to do that. So delegation becomes a very easy thing. It centralizes it a little bit, but it makes it more efficient, so to speak.
Right. It's kind of how we have House of Representatives.
Exactly.
Representatives in Congress. Right?
Yeah. Well, we delegate our voting power to them to make decisions on our behalf. It becomes a lot easier when one person is on behalf of like hundreds of thousands.
Sure.
Because there are so many people, and getting everyone like a one person, one vote issue becomes like wide scale voter turnout problems, attention economy problems. It becomes a bit messy. But governance is definitely, going back to that petri dish thing. I think one of the more interesting things, because you could have all these smaller blockchains test these different governance things and see what works and what doesn't. And then if something works, then you could implement it on a larger chain, or, if it's paid attention to, if there are certain mechanics that you could adopt, so to speak, but you're able to see them in these little controlled environments.
Right. No, that's awesome. Now, are there any projects? I mean, you mentioned obviously Bitcoin. Are there any other top projects that have pretty good governance models?
So,
or is it still fluid?
So I do like the systems like ungovernance, so like Bitcoin. But in terms of projects that I like to take a look at in terms of, with governance, one that always comes to mind for me is Decred.
Okay.
Decred's Politeia system. So it's an on-chain voting system. So you're voting with something that's asset related. So whereas like Bitcoin, you're using your node to signal and what software you're running.
Right.
Decred system is a little different. You're staking Decred. You're working for the network.
Okay.
And in staking and validating transactions, you earn these tickets. There's a ticket market in Decred, and you use these tickets to vote on issues in Politeia. And what Decred's also adopted is a treasury. So projects have dealt with treasuries since the time since Dash first started with that. And the idea is like you're not just voting on consensus issues of Decred or bug issues or code issues. You're also voting on where a certain block reward is going. So if you see someone who wants to develop, so that's a big problem in ungoverned systems, is like who's funding it.
Right.
So there are a lot of Bitcoin developers who deal with funding issues simply because it's a big labor of love for them.
Of course.
And not a lot of companies have a lot of people just purely working on Bitcoin.
Right.
Where Decred's like, okay, if we need developers and we need a core development team or something made, we can push it through Politeia. And if the community wants to vote on it, they can. And if they think it's something that's good enough, the funding goes to the person who's going to develop it.
Right.
Obviously, accountability becomes a huge issue, because how do you make sure that someone is doing something in a decentralized environment? But that's kind of that trade-off. So that person does have that funding to actually make that happen if they can.
Of course. No, super interesting. Awesome, man. Listen, you have such a wealth of knowledge, and I could probably keep you on here for another 30 minutes to another 2 hours. So we may have to schedule a part 2. But I have to let you go. I know how busy it is. We're in the middle of the week. But how can, if you want to follow up with you, your projects, other projects that you're involved in, where should they go?
I think for me, Twitter is probably the best option.
Sure.
My handle's it's Obstropolis, Obstropolos.
I'll link it to the show notes.
Yeah, it'll probably be it'll be in the description somewhere. My inbox is always open, so if anyone ever has any questions, I'm always down to chat if I have time.
Awesome. Well, Rocco, thanks for your time. Thanks for the knowledge, and thanks for sharing your story with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome.